Phil Phails at writing a theme song. He doesn't know the words to sing. If success is the flash in the pan, my friend, then failure's most everything. Phil Phails for you. Phil Phails for you. Phil Phails for you. Phil Phails for you. Welcome to Phil Phails. My name is Philip Jones, and today my guest is Carly Fischer. She's a business owner and a tarot reader. And then this is the time where I put away the pen and the paper and explore Carly Fischer. That's you. Yeah. Goodness, you are into theater. I love it.
I'm actually really shy, though.
Are you?
Yeah.
For the next hour and a half or so, or hour, we're going to learn about you. I'm going to learn about you. And everybody else. Where were you born?
The biggest city in Montana that you've never heard of, named Billings.
Billings. Is that the capital?
Nope.
What's the capital of Montana?
Helena. But it may as well be Missoula because that's really the cultural hub of Montana, and it's the place most people know.
Is Billings or Missoula?
Missoula. That's on the west side where Glacier Park is and Flathead. That's where it's closer to Bozeman.
You were born in Billings, Montana.
Mm-hmm, in the eastern half of the state.
Okay. And there were other siblings?
One older sister.
One older sister. How much older or younger?
3 years.
Wait, how much? Yeah, 3 years between you guys. And is there any... I asked this question now because one person I interviewed said that he was born in the passenger side of a speeding car. Is there any interesting thing about your birth story?
The only thing my mom made sure I knew about my birth is that my dad was busy watching a baseball game.
Ooh, jab at the old man.
Yeah. To which he responded, well, how was I supposed to help her? That's really her own job there.
What?
Yeah. At the time, it was a different era, and he didn't, he felt like he couldn't do very much. So, yeah, I was born 8/36 in a hospital, and both parents were there, and mom was doing the majority of the work there.
Yeah. Are your folks still married?
Do you want to take a guess?
I would say no, they're not married anymore.
You are correct. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. What was your first clue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one thing that your mom tells you about your birth story is that your dad was listening to a baseball game.
But that's because the birth, as far as I know, wasn't complicated. It sounds like the pregnancies went pretty well. There weren't any major issues, no emergency C-sections.
Yeah.
It went as planned, like best case scenarios.
Yeah. And what was your childhood like when you think of 0 to 5? When was your first memory of being a human?
I've never been able to place that. I don't know how people can choose their first memory. Because I wasn't really aware of age. I remember things from my childhood, but I don't remember them in a chronological order. I remember them in vividness, order of importance, not what was the earliest one. My brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah. What's an early? Oh, so yeah, that question would make sense.
But early things in my childhood that I remember are the types of games that we played around the house.
Yeah.
When I was young, I remember eating a lot of Swiss cheese while listening to Marilyn Monroe's album and playing puzzles. I mean, I would have been 6 probably at the time. And then after living in the city for a few years, my family moved us out to the country. So the rest of my childhood was kind of out on a farm. Mm-hmm.
What did your dad do for a living?
He was a coffee salesman.
A coffee salesman?
Yeah. His entire career. He worked for a company called Farmer Brothers Coffee, and he would drive around Montana and North Dakota and nearby states like Wyoming and sell coffee to restaurants, fix their machines. And along with coffee, he sold spices. And so when he'd get home, sometimes my sister and I would run into the truck and we'd go through and smell all the spices and eat some of the anise seeds, which now, of course, would probably be like a violation for OSHA, letting your 7-year-old help themselves to some of the product.
Oh
But
my
I think it
goodness.
was samples. It was samples that we were touching.
Yeah.
So maybe in retrospect, it's not so bad. But yeah, that's what he did. He was kind of a coffee and
I don't
spice
like that.
salesman.
I like the idea of you guys going through just spice bags.
So sometimes my
Goodness.
dad would actually let us be in that huge truck
Yeah.
while he was driving. And one time we were on roller skates back there.
No way.
Hmm.
That's like a family circus cartoon. So he had a big truck, and in the back of the truck was all the spices and the stuff that he would take around to restaurants and
Yep.
places. And you guys were back there on roller skates?
Not while he was on the job, but on the weekend, if he had to like drive the truck to work to work a Saturday or something, and it was just him in the office doing extra work or something, he'd take us along and he would let us ride in the big box in the back.
Was it
Yeah.
dark?
Yeah. It was so much fun though. It was so much fun with your sister, and everything's bungee corded up. Everything was safe. It was
Yeah,
meant
of
to be
course.
safe.
Yeah.
But there we were on roller skates because we were going to be roller skating in the warehouse for the day while my dad was working and my mom was working. And those were some of my favorite memories.
Yeah.
It was super fun.
Riding in the back of the big box
Mm-hmm.
in the dark on roller skates with your sis.
And it was so aromatic.
I
You have
could-
these like vivid scents and
Yeah.
smells.
What do you remember? What smells stood out of
Well,
all of them?
coffee, first and foremost.
Yeah.
Just the amazing smell of coffee. And I never understood as a child why coffee beans smelled so good, but coffee tasted so bad.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense to me. But I remember the smell of. But when you get a bunch of spices together, it creates a symphony of a scent. It's like the way sometimes when you hear all of these instruments together, you can't really pick out one because they harmonize so well. That's what I remember that scent is. It's a bulk scent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of it together. A symphony of scent. A symphony.
And to this day, I love perfume. I remember when I was 14, 15 years old, I would read books about how perfumes were made and how scent was used throughout centuries. Like they say Cleopatra used to actually dip her sails in rose oil. And so when the winds were carrying her to Alexandria, the entire city could smell that Cleopatra was coming to visit their king,
Whoa.
King Alexander the Great.
That is cool.
Right? And what a boss move.
What a boss move.
Like,
That's why we still know about Cleopatra.
she knew how to make an entrance.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And it was through scent. So anywhere I go, I make sure that I'm conscientious of the scent in the space.
Yeah, you being raised with a dad that was selling coffee and spices and being around that enliven your olfactory senses and your awareness and made you curious about the influence of smell and how it played a role in history
Yeah.
and perfume.
How humans need scent, like how humans respond to scent, I guess. How it's so simple, but it's so powerful.
Yeah. I before you arrived, I lit incense.
It made me smile when I walked in. I felt immediately more comfortable.
Did you? Oh,
I felt like you were prepared.
yeah, that's what I do. I make sure to do the incense. I like to have it smell nice. I keep this Palo Santo here. And do you like the smell of Palo Santo?
Love it.
Me too.
I love it. It's that, and sage reminds me of my mentors in my home community.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay, so mom and dad both worked.
they did.
What did your mom do?
Well, my mom was a bookseller for like 11 years, and that's what she did for work. But when I think about what my mom does, like what her life purpose is, she's an artist.
Really? What kind of art?
She went to school for art, and my favorite art she does are horses. She draws these horses, but she draws an abstract horse where you see the circle of the hip and the legs, the lines of the legs, and you see how like the whole being connects. So it's almost like those Japanese brushstroke paintings where it's the gesture.
Yeah.
And I think it's much harder to draw the gesture than it is to draw the realism, like the tight details.
Yeah.
They both take their own skills. But my mom does these phenomenal horses. And then she also was a trained sign painter, which was a dying art in the 80s when she tried to open up her own sign painting business. And it didn't end up being successful, but it's still an incredible skill she has. And she does these amazing hand lettered signs. So I grew up watching her do the hand lettering.
That's an awareness of fonts and all of that type of stuff. Calligraphy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also an awareness of advertising because there's an enthusiasm. And there's an enthusiasm that you have in the script because it isn't always calligraphic.
Yes.
You know, it's like that. It's supposed to make you buy oranges when you see it on the window that was hand painted at the market because
So
that's what it was used for.
Are you saying the way that the lettering would almost invite you to buy oranges, or would it be copy, like some kind of advertisement, like call to action, or?
I think it's the image itself. So not the call to action, not the words chosen, but the brushstroke.
Yeah.
The energy in the brushstroke.
You know, I watched this video or documentary recently about how back in the day, royalty would have fonts chosen, and no one else could use the same font because there was font of the government or font, and that's how you knew that it was the word of the power. And they had this one font that took them like decades to come up with. And this is the origin of our Helvetica and all these fonts that we have now. They used to be crafts, and there was a lot of meaning in each one. The sans serif or serif or whatever, those little embellishments were communicated something.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, I didn't either. It was a really enlightening video. So your mom sold books, and her heart was in art and painting horses and signs. Mm-hmm. Your dad was selling spices, and his heart was a little bit in baseball. I guess the second part.
I think his heart was in creating a stable foundation for the family.
So was he like the breadwinner? Do you think of your dad as a breadwinner?
Yeah, I do, because he almost went to travel the world when he was a young man, and instead he took a job in a local company, and he ended up staying in that job until he retired.
Yeah.
Which is a legendary story. It's not something that happens much anymore.
Not anymore.
And so he stayed very dedicated to the job. He took the 2 weeks off every year, to do a family vacation. He rarely got sick. He was just very consistent and cared a lot about saving money. And it was just middle class. He wasn't, patenting some new invention or anything wild, but he was just very consistent, very diligent, and just showed up to do the work every day.
I heard you say rarely got sick. And the first thing I think is like rarely allowed sickness to slow him down.
Word.
It's like he got sick. We all get sick, but he just, I don't know. Is he alive today?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, he's retired now, but he has a lot of the same habits where he can't not get up at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years of being retired, and maybe now he can sleep in until 7:30. Noon hits, hungry for a sandwich. Takes a 10-minute nap afterwards. Is ready to go on with his day. But then he just kind of stands at the window and has to figure out what is the rest of my day.
Does he drink coffee?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. One of the ironic fights between my parents when they first met is that my mom loved coffee, but loved Folgers coffee.
Oh, no.
And that was the antithesis. Like, this was before we had craft coffee. Like, Starbucks wasn't really popular till the 90s, I think. And they met in the 80s. And so before we had the craft coffee shops, especially up in Montana, something like my dad's company was like good quality coffee. Mm-hmm. And Folgers was the brand looked down upon. Mm-hmm. And so he would concede to her every Christmas and buy her a big tub of Folgers coffee.
So when you were a kiddo, what was your identity like? How did you define yourself?
I once drew a picture of myself in a journal, and I must have been in 6th grade or maybe 4th grade, I think. And I drew me, but segmented. So I had like 4 different outfits on, like shorts over here and jeans over here, t-shirt here, long sleeve here. And I remember it was because I couldn't figure out who I was. And so all throughout my high school years, I could move through any social group as a chameleon, except for the football players. I just didn't fit in. But otherwise, I got along with the cheerleaders. I got along with French club. I got along with the theater kids. I got along with everybody. And I would often, on my lunch hours, try to find a quiet place to sit alone and eat my peanut butter sandwich in peace. And somebody walking by would say, "Oh, hey," and just come sit with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would begrudgingly let them sit there and like make conversation.
But you wanted to be by yourself during that time.
I did. Because there's something about being able to connect to many people that is also, it also means that you're not connecting fully with anyone. And so you connect fully with yourself in that moment of reclusion, retreat.
You weren't connecting fully with any of the people.
Right. It was a part of me connecting with a part of them.
The part that had the cheerleader skirt, or the part that had the theater poof, or the part that had the, I like that.
Right, exactly. And that's still something, now looking back, I use today in my work. I work really hard to find something I can use to understand the person's experience that I'm sitting with.
Mm-hmm.
And so they may be opposite to me. Like they might be a fisherman from the East Coast and I know nothing about their life, but I can find something that we have in common. And it's really enough for me to soften and just make sure that I'm not creating biases or judgments or feeling separate from. It allows me to connect to and do work on their behalf, like with them.
Yeah. Feels like the two things that come up for me is this saying, if it's human, it's not alien to me. And just general skill at relating, or relatefulness.
I also, and I think that I think when we consider identities when we were kids, we feel like we get pigeonholed into certain groups because we're forced to be around people and kind of find our small microculture. Yeah. And some of the movies at the time in the 90s reinforced that, like Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion. They show back up to the reunion 10 years later, and people are still in their cliques, and those people still have those personalities. But the truth is that when you really start talking to that outgoing theater kid, you meet all these other sides of them that just didn't feel safe coming out in that environment. You talk to the cheerleader and you find out the insecurities that she has. Like, I understood that as a teenager when I was meeting all these people. And then now as an adult, you see that they've moved through these chapters of their life where they've moved through different identities based on what was needed of them in an environment. Yeah. And so everyone is really multifaceted.
Right. But we want to fit in maybe in those moments. And so we wear the same clothes as the other group members, and we talk like them, and we don't hang out with other people because it's just safer.
Yeah. Because it is really hard to go up to a group. Yeah. It's different if you can go up to an individual. Yeah. I think that's something else I learned in high school.
One-on-one was easier than, yeah. Do you consider yourself an introvert?
Yes.
Yeah. Always? That's that time eating your peanut butter sandwich.
Yes, that's that time after an event when I come home to silence and I'll just sit still for a while. Yeah. You know, when I've been at a chaotic event, holding space for others and creating moments of stillness, using the activity that I can, but also just really trying to focus in on someone and bring their focus to me. It takes enormous effort to make that connection. And there's all this craziness going on. After that, I need to recover. Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely think I'm an introvert.
When you were a kid, were you a good kid?
Yes, absolutely.
You made good grades. You never got into trouble.
Except for this one time that I punched someone on the playground.
Oh, really?
But he deserved it. His name was John Klopp, and he wouldn't get off the bridge, and I was getting chased by a lava monster.
You punched him?
Absolutely. I had to clear my path.
Where'd you punch him? In
stomach.
His stomach. Did he get out of the way?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he dropped pretty fast. Oh. I think he rolled off the bridge.
You dropped him?
Yeah.
Do you know him to this day?
No, but if he's out there, sorry.
Poor guy. You gotta get off the bridge, homie.
You saw me coming. It was a lava monster.
Lava monster.
Come on. Oh, you can't mess with that.
You were a good kid.
I really was. Me and my sister, we got good grades, and I had a good example. My sister did great in school, and I followed in her footsteps.
So the next question I tend to ask is like, what did discipline look like in your household?
Ooh,
Um,
that's a good question.
and if you're a good kid, I know that there had to have been discipline, or maybe it wasn't called discipline. What was redirection, or what was, how
Those
did,
weren't words that existed at that in my childhood. Redirection.
yeah. What
No.
was discipline like? Did you ever get spanked?
I did get spanked. I remember my aunt spanking me with a wooden spoon one time at her house. That hurt.
Really?
Oh yeah.
How many times?
I think just once. One real good smack. She landed it. She made it count. It was all we needed.
And you were in line after that.
Absolutely.
But your mom or dad, neither of them spanked you?
I don't think so. I don't remember that. So discipline in our house, it was kind of I'm trying to find the right words for it that don't sound judgmental. Because the way I'm remembering is the impact it had on me, right? But I'm sure that wasn't the impact that was intended.
Well, share the impact it had on you, and then we can go backwards.
Sure. I think it was isolation and distance.
Yeah, so go to your room,
Yeah.
or stonewalling, not giving affection or love for a period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's gotta be terrifying.
okay, quit with that. Too early to bring out the tears. This that, and also my family was quiet. Did you live in a quiet family or a loud one?
Oh no.
All right, so a quiet family is really painful because when you don't talk about something, there's almost an implied shame. And I think my family intended it to be peaceful. Maybe they intended respect for one's privacy or something, but we didn't talk about personal things. We didn't talk about issues. So I remember, this wasn't a disciplinary action, but I remember that we didn't talk about dating ever. So I was 20 years old before I started dating for the first time. Oh no, 22. And I hadn't told my parents, and my mom meets me outside the door because I was temporarily living with my family. And she whispered to me, "Are you dating so-and-so?" And she whispered it. We lived out in the country. We were on 3 acres of land, 10 miles outside of town. And she whispered it to me.
Was it just you and your mom there?
And it was just her and I home that
There
day.
was nobody else around.
Nope.
Who are you hiding this from, Mom? The Lord? Is religion a part of this family
No.
in some way?
No, I mean, we went to church, but we didn't have a crucifix at home.
Yeah.
It was not a big part of the family.
Right.
No, I can't explain it. I don't even know if my parents could explain it. My guess is it's how they were raised. So, and believe it or not, I haven't talked to them about it. Shocker.
Boom, you're carrying the torch.
Right. Yeah, true.
They didn't. Go ahead.
So that was disciplinary action and just kind of a behavior in the family.
What kind of thing would bring that? Like, what things do you remember doing where affection would be withheld, or man, if there was a scarcity of communication already, I can't imagine going further down and the impact of that.
We lived on enough. Oh, so what were the things that would cause somebody to retract?
Mm-hmm.
It would kind of more so be a statement of, "I'm disappointed in you." And then the only thing that made sense was to go somewhere else, like to go get your own space.
They wouldn't tell you to go to your room. They would just give out a vibe of like, you shouldn't.
Don't want to be around me right now, kind of a thing.
But what would you do? Like, what were some of the behaviors that needed correction?
I can't even think of any. I mean, it was nothing consistent. I mean, there's nothing I did that my parents like rolled their eyes at consistently or had issues with consistently. It would just be the normal teenage high school stuff. There's nothing that I can think of offhand right now.
Okay.
But it was never anything major. I never graffitied things. I didn't destroy things. I didn't talk back much.
I think this is the universe. This is my emotional support dog scratching at the back door.
Oh.
Are you comfortable with dogs?
Yes. How big is your dog?
It's like kind of this big.
Oh, yeah. That's great. That's
She's
fine.
a sweetheart.
Sure.
And
Yeah. Bring her in.
I'll let her in. Her name is Peppermint.
Aw.
She'll want to come say hi.
Of course.
Carly, but be kind. Don't jump. Don't jump up.
Oh, look at those eyes. Babe?
Aw. Don't jump up, baby girl.
Is she a mix?
I think so. She's a
Maybe?
rescue.
Oh,
She
really
rescued
pretty
me.
eyes.
Yeah.
Cutie.
So, yeah, nothing huge. You didn't like put cherry bombs in the toilets or come home with Fs, an F grade.
No. I had no reason to act that way. And I guess the thing is, my dad taught me
Hold
how
on
to do
one
stuff
second.
like that.
She's swimming. Oh my goodness. Get it, girl. This is the trials and tribulations of having your set at your home and sharing that home with a beautiful, beautiful puppy dog. Okay, go ahead.
What was I saying?
That it wasn't about graffiti or cherry bombs
It
or
wasn't
getting
about that.
F
And to
grades.
be honest, it was my dad who gave us smoke bombs every July 4th and said, like, go put this down by that water pump and kill all the ants. Or like taught us how to put the little jumping jack firecrackers in ant holes.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. He taught us how to burn roly-polies with a magnifying glass.
Really?
Yeah. All that stuff, like, yes, it was destructive and will probably have a karmic cost in my next life.
You mean
But
in this life?
maybe in this life. But we had enough space that we were allowed to do that outside.
Were you a tomboy? Did you identify as like...
I was pretty girly. My
were pretty
sister was a lot more tomboyish. She had more male friends. I had all female friends. And I was raised on Spice Girls.
Oh my goodness.
So that was like core to my identity in elementary school.
Yeah. What did did both your parents navigate kind of what we've called discipline the same way? Or did they have different ways?
I think they navigated it in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But there wasn't like mom was responsible for discipline or dad was. Sometimes I think of this binary, but in families where the dad's a disciplinarian and the mom's the nurturer.
Right. No, it didn't happen.
Didn't know.
I think my mom was a little more intense, had to be intense. I remember my mom wouldn't let me watch TV while I was doing homework.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd come out and she'd have a booming voice because she used to be in theater. And when she used her deep theater voice, that was when you were really scared.
Oh my God.
You know, it was like the dragon came out. So I remember that was a scare tactic that was used. But again, that was just a mom making sure a kid got her homework done. That wasn't discipline necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think discipline was a really big part of my childhood.
Yeah. What was kind of love and nurturance look like in your house? Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. That's a big sigh. It's a big sigh.
Well, my family wasn't very hands-on.
What's the sigh? Was it sadness or like there wasn't a lot of love?
The sigh is that I don't have any great story to share with you.
Yeah.
To be honest.
And maybe it's like you think you should or something.
Yeah. I mean, it would be great if I said, oh yeah, I totally learned to love because of my parents and had all these great stories of how my parents showed affection and how close we are today. But it's kind of the same as discipline. It was just this nice middle ground where we didn't go really far into discipline. I don't feel like my parents deeply, deeply traumatized me.
Yeah.
But they also weren't really, really big on nurturing. I mean, I remember this one time I had the flu. This is a terrible example to share. I acknowledge that. But for instance, I had the flu and the flu really hurts. We forget how much it hurts until we have it. You have
Yeah.
the chills and the
Yeah.
body aches.
Yes.
You're just shocked at how much it hurts.
And you think it'll be forever.
Yes.
Like this is
every
just
time
how
I'm
I'm
sick.
going to live now.
Yeah. If I even live through this.
I'll
this
never
might be
breathe
the
through
end.
either of these nostrils again. I'm a mouth breathe forever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You start writing your will. My sister can have my stereo, all that. So I'm laying on the couch in immense pain, and my mom comes storming into the living room and begins berating me for not washing a dish, having left it on the countertop. And my dad was in the living room with me. And I remember just looking at my dad in shock because I was immobilized, so sick. And it was just unbelievable to me that I would be in such a moment of pain and vulnerability and illness.
Mm-hmm.
and to not have that be understood by my parent, you know? So that was kind of, so my dad was really nice about it and kind of would do some interference there sometimes with my mom. But of course, I think my mom had her own story of the challenges that she was going through as a woman, as a mom. I think she had her own mental health challenges potentially even. And so I don't want to blame anyone.
It's okay. There's this way.
I just don't want her to watch this and
No, I get it.
feel feel blamed or called out, because it's no one knows how to parent perfectly.
There's this way I want to hold everybody harmless, but still have your story.
Yeah.
Where your story isn't necessarily a finger pointing at anybody, but is kind of the way you view your past.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me share another story.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to share a neutral story, and then I'll share a great story. I remember my mom would do great at reading stories to us as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my dad loved to play with us, of course. Like, we played great games. So my mom was really great at reading stories to us. And I remember sitting with her on the chair that would be rocking, and she'd hold hot coffee. And she'd be reading a story to me. I'd be a kid of 4 or 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd watch the coffee because I would know she's starting to fall asleep. And it's right
Spill it
here,
on you?
and I'm sitting right here, and
Oh my
I'd see it
God.
start to tip, and I would wake her up, and she'd keep reading the story, and the coffee would be safe. So I'd keep her awake so she could read the story.
Oh.
But I bring that up because she cared so much about trying to read this story and sit with me, and she was trying to stay awake and get her own needs met, but she was obviously exhausted.
Yeah.
Right? So I give her credit. I mean, she really tried.
Yeah.
And she did succeed in so many ways, like Christmas presents, Christmas stockings were filled. Totally supported our passions, my sister and I, in trying art, getting to be athletes in school. Like, she supported all of those.
What did support look like?
She would give us rides when she could.
Mm-hmm.
She would give us space.
Mm-hmm.
She would give us space. I had the whole solarium, which is a room where we had plants. I had a bench in there that I turned into an art studio, and I would just paint for hours after school every day.
Yeah.
She never told me what to paint. She would, let me use her paints, her acrylics.
Yeah.
And she let me have that space. And that's really generous, I think. I got to do whatever I wanted to in my room and get to paint to any color. So there is that freedom. And space was also a gift.
Yeah. Autonomy.
Absolutely.
And then driving you places.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I do remember my mom she could flip really fast. And so I think space also felt safe to me.
Like,
Her mood could shift really fast.
Yeah, what mood she'd be in or what would trigger her.
Exactly. And I know that that's not an unusual experience for a kid, but I think that's why space has been so significant to me in my life.
Because you were safe there.
Yeah.
If there was no one there was no one to flip.
Yeah. And you'd have a buffer. If something was coming, you could hear it coming.
Oh, what would you do when you heard it coming? Would you hide or would you
no.
brace yourself?
Just brace. Just kind of.
What'd that mean?
Prepare to be non-reactive.
Because there
as
would
much
be
as possible.
something in your mom's demeanor that would be seeking a reaction from you, or
Yeah, knowing that I was in a comfortable, peaceful space that was about to get disturbed. And so anything I could do to prepare to be hit with that wave and to not be disturbed would help me.
How old were you?
8, 9? When I remember that starting, it was in the
8
house
or
we moved
9,
into.
you were preparing yourself to stay emotionally regulated.
Yeah.
What?
My therapist had the same reaction. Yeah.
That had to have been hard.
It was. But, we all go through our own challenges.
Yeah. Including your mom.
Yeah. Make us who we are. I'm not mad about it.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been that, it would have been something else.
Well, yeah. And how, God.
And I think you can sense a pattern that I wasn't the only person who behaved that way. I think My dad probably behaved that way. So did my sister. My mom probably did that. Like, I probably learned that by watching other members of my family have that type of a brace as well. Like, if everyone stays emotionally regulated and no one goes off the deep end or like gets super excited, then you're kind of more stable.
I mean, you're calling it a brace, but I'm curious if it was dissociation.
How do you define that? Help me out
I
with that.
mean, I don't know that I could.
Because it never felt like an out of body experience.
But there's just a way of going inside of yourself and kind of, you know how you said what is required in a tarot reader is participation and engagement.
Mm,
And that's what you stop doing with the world around you
when it was unsafe to be engaged.
when it was unsafe.
Absolutely.
And disassociation, I think of like, I'm not going to engage with this world. I'm not going to participate. I'm going to go inside where it's safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man. And so your mom had that dynamic. Your dad, what was his dynamic like?
More jovial. But I say that with a caveat because he wasn't home as often as my mom was. He was and is really funny and friendly and giggly and just very kind. And I think there's so many gender dynamics that come into play, I think, with this.
Yeah.
That I just want to be conscientious of.
Let's just
But
let's just respect everybody
yeah.
and everybody's journey, and that the cycle of violence or whatever this is. Your mom, she's not right or wrong or good or bad. She got that way through some intergenerational trauma or some kind of neurodivergence or some kind of there's something.
And she had a terrible experience with psychologists. So when she once had a breakdown and sought help, the help was not helpful. It was more harmful than it was helpful.
Well, they give her electro.
Not like that, but it was totally disempowering to her.
Yeah.
My dad didn't know what to do with that. Mental health was not a conversation at that time.
Yeah.
They were new parents. They were newlyweds. My dad had just lost his mother. And she died of Lou Gehrig's disease. So that's a very slow degenerative disease. And so he slowly watched his mom pass away.
Oh my
and
goodness.
his family they weren't talking about emotions. They weren't talking about loss. It wasn't the world we have today where we talk a lot more about this stuff. We didn't have the words for it.
Yeah.
And so, I guess we had words for it, but it just wasn't as common as it is now. And so when my mom had this experience of a breakdown and then having a harmful experience with care, I think it really scared her because it both put a stigmatism, is that the right word? Like
Sure.
a fear around a label.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but it sounds good to me.
Okay, we can look it up later. But I think it put a fear around seeking therapy, seeking help, trusting others.
Yeah.
And then she was diagnosed, she was labeled. Meanings and associations came along with that. Anytime there was a conflict between my parents, that would be reinforced.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't healing occurring
Yeah.
there. And it was just like individuals becoming more hurt, I think, in their own cycles. And then we as the kids witnessed that, saw that. And then I think we just saw it get worse over time. So we're still talking to my mom about seeking treatment and saying it's a different world now, but I'm not mad that she doesn't want to dive into it. She's open to it. She's more open to it now than ever before, but it has been 30 years.
Yeah.
About 30 years. And I don't blame her for wanting to make sure it's safe. It's, the right choice. It's a big deal.
When did your folks get divorced?
I think it was 2015. It was the year I moved to Austin.
So you weren't in the house when it happened. They
No.
stayed together your whole childhood.
Yes. They really wanted to have two parents in the household until the kids were gone. I think they really wanted to just keep it together until we were out of the nest.
How do you think that type of environment impacted you and the way that you relate to others or
I definitely learned that it's better to know when to call it quits. It's part of why I'm a more creative problem solver. I don't think pushing your way through a tough situation is always the best answer, right?
When you say call it quits, what do you mean?
They could have gotten divorced sooner, and maybe that would have been better for them. Who knows? There's no way for us to know. Maybe it would have been better for me. Who knows? There's no way to know. But we knew that their relationship was fraught and that there was a lot of unhappiness and unwellness. And we could just see that. And I could see that my parents weren't each living a life of their full potential. And I wanted them to live their full potential.
Yeah.
And I saw them sacrificing that, thinking that it was for our benefit. At least telling us it was for our benefit.
Did you grow up too quickly in that environment?
I don't think so. I think we're meant to observe relationships. I think we learn a lot by watching relationships, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah. There's
And,
this.
and we're never taught how to be in relationships I mean, in my generation, we weren't, right? Now I think we're parenting kids differently and talking to them about friendships, but I don't think that it's part of a school curriculum and it's not something we really think about too much.
Yeah. I think of a saying, and I think about it often. Do you have kiddos?
No?
Yeah. I think of this saying that we're watching our parents grow up too. The kids watch the parents grow up too.
Because they're doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
I mean,
No
one has the answer.
No, and hearing your story, I think about my family, and yeah, I think yours is not. I've heard a similar variation to this. It's not what I was raised in. I wasn't raised in the quiet family. I was raised in a more kind of scary, kind of like chaotic and like abusive type of environment where it sounds like the opposite end, where on your end there wasn't a lot said and it was like not enough maybe connection or not enough, I don't know what you'd call it. And on my end it was like escalation to unhealthy points frequently.
I wonder if the word you're looking for is response. Because when there's a response, you can express things, you can let things move through you, you can find resolutions.
Yeah.
You can share viewpoints.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have a lot of responses. You had too much response. Like it went to that point of escalation where it wasn't productive or was abusive.
The responses created an environment where there wasn't safety. Where there was fear and like, oof. Yeah. And you're still friends with your mom and your dad, and is that true? Do you still have a relationship with both of them?
Yeah, we still talk. We're building friendships now, I think.
Yeah. Man.
It's still I think every relationship is a delicate balance, and I think my relationships have become more stable in the last 10 years with my parents than ever before. So that's good.
Yeah.
But that's also after they've divorced. And I think they're understanding who they are more. And so I'm connecting more to an authentic part of them. And they're connecting to me. I'm seeing them take risks. I'm seeing them discover who they are. And they're seeing me do the same here in Austin in my career and whatnot. And so there's more of a friendship that's occurring.
I just had this thought of your mom and dad as, in one of those groups.
2 different groups.
Where they weren't able to express and be all the things they wanted to be because they were in that group.
You're right, yeah.
And now that they're not in that group, they're saying like, well, who am I really? Like, what was I not exploring because I was in that pair bond?
Exactly. You're right.
I just think about how to be in a pair bond where there's acceptance for folks' expressions and their curiosity and all of those things without imparting your own fear that might come up. I mean, imagine it's a fear of loss or something. Like if they explore something else, I might lose them in some way.
Their identity might change. They won't be who I need them to be to me. Do you ever read Gottman's Seven Principles of
Oh yeah, it's
Relationship?
on the wall.
Great choice, great choice. Database research, right?
Yeah.
So, one thing I love is that when he talks about love maps, that cognitive space that you give to a partner, a friend, where you memorize their likes and dislikes, their friends, their enemies, all of that information about them, you need to update that regularly.
Yeah.
And having date nights where you're asking those questions again and not taking for granted that this information is going to stay the same. Like it might change. And sharing hopes and dreams and being able to listen in a space that's non-judgmental to hear what is it that they want to do. And maybe you can't support by being with them on that journey, but how can you lend support verbally and giving them the encouragement to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think those are some great answers to that question because those things change over time as people change. We're meant to change in
We're
relationships.
meant to.
You have to update your info.
And you have to grow, impermanence.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that's consistent in this world is change. So there's a constant updating. I think of that saying, you never jump in the same river twice.
I think of it from Pocahontas. You can't step in the same river twice.
Yeah.
The current's
And
always flowing, always moving.
it's always changing. And we're always changing.
Like the colors of the wind.
Oh my God. Are you about to break into song?
No, I'm not that theatrical.
I will allow it. We're always changing and growing.
Exactly.
Our attention always goes different places. We're forever impacted and influenced by experience, and all we have is experience. To be alive is a series of experiences. I'll be forever changed through this connection with you today. I mean, I'm forever changed when I step on Peppermint's foot when we're walking in the morning. Like everything changes us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes a ton of sense. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I think the idea of freedom, the way I see it in my mind, is the freedom to decide what experiences you put in front of yourself in order to change. So
Yeah.
what change do you initiate through choosing the challenge that you face and choosing to learn from it? You know, like I'm not a big fan of saying something is good or bad,
Yeah, me neither.
right? I think you don't know how it's going to turn out until you look back. And as long as you learned something from it, it was valuable. And so you just have to choose what challenges you take on and kind of try to choose what new things you do and what new parts of yourself you explore. Because as Carl Jung says, we were all born whole. We became fragmented as we grow. And then we spend our adult lives trying to put ourselves back together. A lot of that inner child work is based around connecting to that sense of wholeness and being able to explore these things about you that you've known since you were a child, but like didn't have a chance to express, didn't have a chance to adventure into. And that's what we get to do now with adults and credit cards.
Yeah. I've told that story, the Carl Jung story with the Rubik's Cube. I think
Ooh.
of
Will you walk us through it?
I will. Yeah. Let me grab the other one. I think of
You have you have quite a collection of Rubik's cubes.
Yeah, I do. You can pick them up and play with them if you want. They're there to be played with. Where's mine? Peppermint girl, how you doing? There's these guys.
Hey, darling. Hey, girl. What's up, Taco?
There's these guys. Have you ever seen those?
Are they broken?
No. I mean,
What did you do
I
to
was
them?
almost offended. I was like, no.
Did you leave them in the car in the summertime?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, those are wild cubes. Where's my?
Is there a different name for this type of cube?
I don't know. That's a good question. You know, I haven't done a ton of research on Rubik's Cube and what makes one. I think I would do my own.
This one doesn't even have colors on it.
They all move.
This is like a Y2K
So,
Rubik's Cube.
oh man, hey Beth, you're so good.
She's so calm inside.
So I have this idea. That when we're born,
Yeah.
we're born a Rubik's Cube that's organized. All the yellows are on the side of the yellow, all the reds are on the side. We're all put together. And you know, much like the fool's journey and much like the human journey, it's imperfect. And with every little, like, you know, challenging word or not being met, um, or not understanding or unkind, a yell when you were sick and you left a plate out, or every time you encountered a mom who was stressed to the max and didn't know how to regulate their emotions and didn't want to be alone in it, probably, and went to the people that were around them to figure something out or to express or to
Or
be.
banged on a counter to get out the anger.
Every time this Rubik's Cube gets flipped around,
Yeah.
and then we get a little bit older, and the 2x2 becomes a 3x3 because the world gets more
Because
complicated.
then you start dating.
Oh my
Because then you
goodness.
get your bad grades from that professor in college and
I
get
mean,
told you can't do your career.
then you get to this, and
Delightful.
and somewhere along this journey, like somewhere along this path, you wake up, right? You wake up to um being alive. You're a human, and you're challenged with like figuring out, what does this all mean? Like, how do I organize this Rubik's cube? How do I make it make sense? Again, how do I become whole? How do I find my way back, my expression,
Mm-hmm.
in a world where it's always changing? Like, what is your expression one day might not be the next day, but hopefully, I think by the time we make it there, we have all the pieces. I think some people live a life where they don't have all the pieces because the experiences they had were this thing was thrown on the ground and smashed. And so even when they put it back together, it's like it's never going to be whole.
And sometimes it's hard to do the work yourself without the right people around you to reflect their thoughts and experiences with you, of you, to
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely.
And so unless you have an environment where you can learn about yourself in a way that's supportive, it's very hard to put yourself back together.
Yeah. And when what it sounds like you've done is you've immersed yourself with in psychology. You've mentioned a couple people that I totally admire. I love in the battle of Freud versus Jung, the scientist or the mystic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mystic all the way.
Oh, yeah.
Like, give me Jung, give me Carl Jung, give me the archetypes, give me the magician, the lover, the 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 king, and the warrior. Give me John Gottman, the book, The Science of Trust. Have you read The Science of Trust?
No, I haven't.
And I think that those are like, with the Rubik's Cube, they give us this algorithm where we can figure out some certain things, either to whether it's breath work or whether it's like, it's different things where I can look at it and I can organize this. I can say, oh, okay, so I go back that way, or do the face that way, and
And
go back
everyone
that
was
way.
kind of arranged in a different way. So they need a different modality or a different algorithm for themselves to get back the right way. So, like, there may be components of one algorithm that isn't present in a different person's
Totally.
formula.
Absolutely. Everybody needs their own algorithm. There's not one algorithm for everybody,
Yeah, yep, very
for
much.
sure. And if it works right, can you ever really figure it all out?
No, but I think that's why we're
And
so
it's,
dedicated to it.
I mean, I can figure this out, but I don't know that I'll ever get this back.
I think when you figure it out, you reach enlightenment and you're done
Yeah.
with the work. I think there are enlightened beings, maybe, that you can say did figure it out. They had the algorithm and they shared it, what they could, in their time on earth, through their scripture, through their disciples.
I'll share this. I'm studying, like, one of the people that I interview. He's a professor of philosophy. I go a lot of different rabbit holes, and one of them is philosophy. And at the end of this, I'll ask you to continue this discussion if you'd like. And one of the ways could be you showing me how you read the tarot, and we could do, you know, videotape the way you explore the cards in connection with a human being, and it would be me. The way I continued this journey with Grant Potts, a professor of philosophy, was we chose a book together to explore philosophy. And I would invite philosophy and philosophic thought and exploration in my life through taking the big questions of philosophy one by one with him. And we've talked about two of them now. We'll talk about the third one this coming up week. And the book we chose is a comparative look at those big questions between Western philosophy and Buddhism.
Mm.
And it's so when I've gotten deeply down the rabbit hole of Buddhism and what the awakening is, it's a little terrifying. That's true. I don't want to say that, but it's true. Because it's emptiness and non attachment. But the non attachment comes through the awareness that it's emptiness, that no self. And I think my ego rages against that. The no, I collect us. I keep us together. I give you the breath in the morning to be. How would you not be without me, ego? How will you have bravery? How will you?
Have fun.
Yeah. And I think that's where the idea of the two truths come in, the conventional truth of my name is Philip and your name is Carly, and we're having an interview, and you know, you have a blue jacket on and I'm wearing pants. The conventional truths that we need to relate and to be human, and then the absolute truth that it's empty.
I think terrifying is the right word for that. It's scary. A lot of the Buddhist practice that we see today is that feel-good Buddhism,
Yeah.
where it's using the concepts to the degree that it provides comfort
Yeah.
in the challenges that you're facing now or the chaos of the world. But when people really, really pursue the path, it is ferocious.
Yeah.
I have some friends who follow Rinpoche and do retreats, and the retreats are intense
Yeah.
out in fields where sometimes it is literally freezing at night, and it's a 30-day in the field trip.
Really?
And this woman who follows this Rinpoche, she's the translator of the Tibetan language to all of her Spanish followers. I mean, like, this is their practice. Like, she's dedicated to this for the rest of her life, you know.
Yeah.
And she's living this full life, but she's practicing the principles. And there's only so much you can even do in one lifetime.
Yeah.
And so if it helps you feel better, like, I look at my friend who is very dedicated to this path in a very serious way. But she also loves to go swimming in Barton Springs because she knows that she's not going to achieve enlightenment in this lifetime, most likely. You know, it'd be great if it happened. But she's simply on the path, and
Yeah.
she's dedicating her life to it. But in the meantime, she's still human, and she's here to fully embody that experience. And I think we have to also acknowledge that we are organisms on this planet interconnected to others.
Yeah.
Even though we're not fully enlightened yet, you know, we can still be aware of that presence and aware of that experience and do the best with who we are, with what we have.
Yeah.
Because when you are nothing, when you fully dissolve that ego and you no longer exist, it means that you're also connected to everything else around you.
Yeah.
And so it's just a greater level of what you can already be aware of in this more embodied experience.
Mm-hmm. How do you see spirituality? Are you spiritual? Are you religious in any kind of way?
That's an interesting question. I am curious, right?
Mm-hmm.
big part of my personality. And so I'm not religious. But I'm on the same journey to understand all the big questions that everyone else is.
Yeah.
And so in my professional life, I really pull out spiritual qualities. I do not inject that into my work. I do not project that onto other people or expect them to comply to my own
Right.
life system. So I'm really secular in that space, but I'm exploratory in my personal space.
Yeah. Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Well, do angels exist? I don't know. But do I talk to them? Hell yeah, I do. Because why not? Come on. Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So, I was raised, when I say raised, I mean as a tarot reader.
Mm-hmm.
My mentor taught me things. And part of what I do is because I'm exploring the path that she's found successful for herself and encouraged me to follow. And I trust her. And I trust my mentors. So part of me is there as the student. And part of me is there because, well, I forgot what I was going to say because I was thinking about my mentor right there.
Talking to angels.
But yeah, because it feels good and why not? And so I do, what was I going to say?
We could take a breath.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you race after what you were saying, it can feel scary.
It's true. So I explore things because I was advised to, because it's worked for somebody else. And I explore it because I'm curious about it in my own way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do notice that the paths I explore are ones that have been walked recently by the people I admire. So, for instance, I have not gone into an arcane book of occult knowledge and said, I'm going to suddenly start practicing the higher banishing ritual of the pentacle and become a magus in my living room, right? And do this regularly, because my mentors didn't do that.
Yeah.
And there's this, I can't describe it, but there's a firm belief inside me that you're born in a place around people in a part of land to have an experience that contextualizes who you are and what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
And your tools are there with you.
Yeah.
You're given those tools when you get, plunked down on earth. And so if you're observant in your journey, you recognize that what you need is around you and you're grateful for it and you work with it. And of course, you're also being handed tools that are total duds and you're being handed temptations, right? That could take you down a different path.
Yeah.
And so you still must practice discernment with what you feel is the right tool for you, but you have to pick that. And that's an experimental process. Yeah. So it's been I follow in the steps of the people that have been guiding me.
That's a good question. And I notice we're probably approaching the end of the interview, and I think
I have some extra time if that helps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the question I had was how did you find your way to a curiosity and a desire to learn about tarot and to seek out mentors? And where the heck do you even find tarot mentorship? How does that, can you take us from your childhood to I want to explore this in depth and then furthermore have a business in it?
Sure. Well, I never sought out tarot. It wasn't something that I thought about or knew anything about until somebody put a deck in my hands as a gift. And I do believe that it's a rumor, it's a myth. You don't need to be gifted tarot to be great at it. But it happened to be what happened to me. And so friends sat and taught me how to read the cards for the first time. While we were at a meditation group, a friend of mine was leading in Montana. Mm-hmm. And then shortly after, somebody in our local spiritual community in Montana, which was, 20 people in this hometown.
This was Buddhism, or what was it? Meditation retreat. So it was
just
mindfulness.
We didn't have a word for it. So in Montana, there is so little of it that it wasn't one thing. Buddhism, there could be some breath work, there could be some mindfulness, there could be some Buddhism.
There was a conscious community there. What would you call it? How did you...
An open-minded group of people. Truly, because you're coming from a space where everyone's listening to country music, eating red meat, and riding four-wheelers.
Yeah.
And so when you meet someone who doesn't do that, who wants to go see a drag show, who wants to go dress up as a nun on the run for Halloween and pretend to smoke cigarettes with you? You know, that's like a group of people you hang out with. They're just open-minded.
Yeah.
And so everyone was completely unique. And you look at them now, they're in these different places. It wasn't until I came to a big city that I realized, whoa, there's whole communities based around these singular practices.
Yeah.
This was one community that integrated all those practices, and we were all just vibing. We were just excited to try it all.
How exciting.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so one person would have experience with one thing, someone else with another. We didn't always have names for it or words for it. They would just say, let's try this, let's try that. And it was when YouTube was first getting started, you know,
Okay.
it wasn't information overload yet. So we're in a meditation group. My friend started at the college, and every week we'd focus on a different topic that her and her friend would choose. So one week we might bring in the owner of a bookstore who also was a practicing Buddhist, and he would teach us a Vipassana meditation, watching a candle flame, right? And then the next week we'd focus on food and the spiritual significance of food, or how relevant it is that you think about, you know, what you put into your body that
Like
becomes you.
Thich Nhat Hanh has a whole, I think it's called Savor, his book on, there's the raisin meditation is the one that
And
John Kabat-Zinn had.
Right. I feel like that's mindfulness.
Yeah.
This was literally just health.
Oh.
This was like, have you heard of a goji berry?
Like, what are superfoods? Yeah.
We were so excited. We are like, no, let's eat some.
Really?
Raw cashews. Did you know you can make cashew butter out of this?
No way. So
that's the level of what we were at in Montana.
Okay.
Yeah. I just want to knock it down a few notches there. But it was so joyful. It was so liberating. We discovered kombucha, you know, like hummus, like these things that were not common in our households.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I imagine being the kind of outsider clique, it made y'all, the group cohesion was high.
Yes.
Like y'all were vibing, as you'd say. It was like there was a real camaraderie.
Yeah, we
in
had
your
ribbon
outsiderness.
dancers.
You had what?
We had ribbon dancers and fan dancers and poi spinners, but there wasn't a poi community in town.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a little melange. And I'm blushing now to think of it because it seems so silly. I remember coming to Austin and hearing about how trivialized some of these concepts were and how commercialized and marketed they were. And I was just astounded. You know, I had never seen a world like this before. And I didn't like what I walked into. I didn't like what I saw.
Where? Here?
Here. And I was hanging out with someone from LA.
I think there's like a Instagram conscious thing here. I want to be mindful of the audience, but yeah, I've got my own take on conscious community here.
I think it happens LA is a great example. I see it here. I just see it in these bigger cities where I think the point is lost.
Yeah.
And I think that's
a
the best way
lifestyle brand as opposed to a pathway to, you know, enlightenment or awakening expression in you, or well-being. Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to this meditation group, so it was one of those nights that the focus was on tarot. And my friend led a meditation into a tarot card. And my card was the Queen of Pentacles, and it was a wonderful meditation. So afterwards, the leader gave me a deck. Two friends sat down, we did readings, and I identified this as a way to build relationships and have a really good conversation.
Yeah.
So how does a mentor appear? The thing is that it's never really an agreed upon thing. You can't, it's really hard to go seek a mentor. It's something that you become aware of, I think.
Yeah.
You're observant enough, and then there's a generosity where that person desires to share and you desire to receive, and you link up. And so a woman in town offered to teach me about the tarot cards, and I was working at an art museum up the street from our singular metaphysical shop, which we're lucky we even had one in Montana, Billings, Montana. She was there reading cards on most days, but she had a full-time job running her own hair salon and nail salon. And so I'd join her on her lunch breaks, and she'd be eating a ham sandwich in one hand and putting down tarot cards with the other, walking me through the cards. And in this process, she taught me the ethics. She taught me the appropriate ways to read for people and where the boundaries were. She taught me how to take care of myself as a reader, how to limit myself as a reader and get the experiences I needed personally before I started reading for others.
Yeah.
Things that I think are easily missed over now.
Mm-hmm.
I think people acquire knowledge and immediately start regurgitating it and putting it back out there without considering these other really important components of delivery and presence.
Yeah.
And so I was graced with this person's guidance, and she's been doing tarot for 30 years prior. This was early 2000s. So I really learned what tarot was like and what these rituals and habits were for those 30 years. And then I've kind of brought it into the new era, honoring those past traditions, but recognizing that a lot of that was built around needs at the time. The world has changed, and so there's different things we do now.
Yeah.
Right? But keeping at its core still a lot of those ethics.
Yeah.
So I have this other teacher, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
in the world of belly dance, because that's another half of the work that I do. And my mom was a dancer. So I'm a second generation belly dancer. Yeah. And my mom's like this awesome artist, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Goodness, that's like OG ecstatic dance.
don't get me started on ecstatic dance.
Oh, I think I want to get you started on ecstatic
No,
dance.
you've seen my reaction to improv. And I think that those are, it's a very personal discomfort with the concept of ecstatic dance.
Oh my God, but belly dancing is okay?
Yeah.
You can do that?
Yes, yeah. And you're right, because there is this freedom. There's flow with music. There's
Yeah,
expression
yeah.
through movement. I totally understand the connection.
But I guess there's structure with belly dance and there's a ritual.
And there's also, typically there's one dancer. So you have a lot of the space to yourself. When I'm in an ecstatic dance situation, I'm terrified I'm going to get hit. I'm like terrified I'll fling my hand into someone's face.
Oh, you might.
It's like a spatial thing for me.
I got you.
So
tell me about belly dance.
well, the thing is that my mom was a dancer. I followed in her footsteps. She worked with a male belly dance teacher from Salt Lake City, Utah back in the 1980s.
Is she Indian or is it? Where does
No.
belly dance comes from? Like
Egypt.
Egypt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did your mom end up being a belly dancer?
It was really big back in the 70s in the U.S. Huge. We had a lot of immigrants coming to the U.S. bringing their instruments. We had clubs opening up. And so you'd have a Lebanese singer, you'd have an Egyptian drummer, they'd get together. Music gets boring after a while, they need a dancer. So belly dance takes off in the U.S.
Yeah.
And it's also the rise of feminism. So all these women are like, look what I can do with my body.
Like, yeah. Oh, like the original kind of my body acceptance and like.
Totally. Athleticism was there and creativity and artistry. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I wish I could have lived in that era.
Okay.
So this man is famous in California from Salt Lake City. His name is Aziz.
Mm-hmm.
Stunning human being. I mean, just he looks at you and audiences are silent and then they go wild. Remarkable performer.
Okay.
She worked with him a couple times. She quits belly dancing, once the kids come and so on. I start taking lessons with a local teacher who tells me about this man that used to teach, who had this long blonde hair. He would start his performances off with everything wrapped up in a turban, and then he'd spin, spin, spin with finger cymbals going a mile a minute. And as he'd go, his turban would start coming undone as he would flip his head.
Whoa.
And the turban would come off, and then this long hair would unravel and come down, and women would scream and go crazy.
They would swoon.
They would swoon, and he didn't care because he was completely into the
He was in the
men.
dance.
Yeah, and he also was not into women.
Okay.
So
That's probably
he was-
what drove me even wilder.
they couldn't have him.
Yeah.
He was amazing. Okay,
Wow.
so one day 3 years ago, I heard about this woman who my teacher had referenced coming to town. She was coming with a special guest. This woman used to dance back in the 70s. I said, I got to go meet Amaya. I've heard about her. I've learned one of her moves from my teacher up in Montana. I got to meet the legend. I show up. Her guest teacher happens to be a tall 6-foot man with blonde hair.
No way. It's the guy.
I recognized him immediately, though I'd never seen a picture of him. So I'm about to perform. I know he's in the audience, and I make sure in my bio it says, it's the first night. Like, we haven't done classes yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I make sure my bio says, this is Carly Fischer from Billings, Montana, who is taught by Sonia Alarcon. The second the announcer says that, I hear a chair scrape. And then I'm standing behind saloon doors because we're at like this bar.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our backstage, was the bathroom area. And then I see this 6-foot blonde-haired man with blue eyes pop his head over the saloon doors. And he says, you know Sonia? You know Sonia? And I said, yes, I'm kind of like your granddaughter in belly dance. I've been wanting to meet you for 20 years. And then my music starts and he's talking and I'm like, oh, that's my cue. And he opens the saloon door for me. And I'm like, okay, bye. I go out to the stage. So I work with him. I was emotional. It was amazing to get to be on stage with him. Workshops happened on stage. It was amazing to work with him.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that you're going to love about him is that he started the class by saying, is it okay with everyone if we make sure everyone has a piece of material before we move on?
Mm.
Not only does that show an immense level of compassion that he has for every student in class, making sure they feel safe, that no one will be rushed, no one will be left behind,
Inclusivity.
but also the confidence he had as a teacher, that he knows he can teach you this.
Yeah.
You're here and he will make sure you learn it well
Yeah.
without being rushed. I mean,
Yeah.
stunning human being. So I got chills as I said that.
Yeah.
So pandemic hits. I suppose all this happened 4 or 5 years ago. Pandemic hits, isolation occurs, dance workshops, performances, everything stops. Last year, I remembered I had his phone number. I texted him, said hi. He immediately called me and said hi. And we started multi-hour conversations about dance. And then this summer, I went to work with him in his studio in Salt Lake City. He's fully retired. He's now a painter. He cooks all his own meals. He eats healthy, organic stuff. Amazing still life painter. But he still has a beautiful studio in his home. And he loves to dance. And he has all of that skill and style. He's out of this
exudes it.
world.
Yeah.
And he tried to teach me what he does. And he did. He told me exactly what he does. And I tried my damnedest.
You had to find your own way.
And I still can't do it the way he does.
Well, you can never do it the way someone else does it.
He is a complete channel. I mean, you watch him and you see.
He can unlock in you the way Carly does it, but you'll never be able to do the way he does
That's exactly what he says. That's exactly what he says. And so he's willing to share, and he says, I want to give you everything I have. And you would think that would be enough, but you know what? It's not. Because I have to be the student who's willing to be active and say, I'll take that, I'll work with that, I'll integrate it, and I'll honor that in my own way.
The first Phil Phails question, you have to take the influence and make it real in your life. I think of the hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell. He's a part of your journey. He's experience, but that is inside of you where it unlocks something. Your expression can never be his. It can only be yours.
Yep. And that's the importance of the human experience. Going back to this idea of dissolving the ego, sometimes I wonder, is that really what we want? Like, it's so important to understand who you are and how you can impact other people. You have your own way of doing things. You're meant to have your own way of doing things. And I'm still at a stage where I am excited to explore that.
Yeah.
And so seeing this creator, this performer, this channel who does consider dance spiritual, he meditates 2 hours every morning. He has a deep connection to Jesus, which took me by surprise because I'm not spiritual like that. And he says that he asks to receive that spirit before he goes on stage. He'll be backstage praying and meditating. And then he comes out and he says, I let Jesus take over, which is nothing. That's not what I expected to hear him say.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Let's go belly dance. Right?
Hey.
And I don't have that relationship with Jesus.
You'll have your inner intuition, your inner guide, whatever it is that Carly does to come into that moment, to find flow, like Mahai Csikszentmihalyi talks about.
To reach something higher, to ascend.
That idea of success, to be on a flow state.
Yes. Oh, I love a flow state.
In the moment, be here now, fully actualized.
Hardest thing to do.
Your expression.
Can I tell you the tragedy of belly dance in my life right now?
You'd be hard not to.
Okay. So it almost came to tears. I was so excited telling you about my teacher and this amazing connection we have because we're talking about mentors. But my biggest block is that I was dating somebody and engaged to somebody who was Arab And so Arab music, Arab language, Arab culture was a huge part of my life for years. And I was visualizing an entire future where this would be integrated.
Yeah.
And then after we separated, which I had to initiate the separation, now it's really painful. I haven't been able to listen to that music. I haven't been able to dance freely. I haven't been able to engage comfortably in my local community of dancers and musicians and performers because of that heartbreak that I'm still working through. And I reached out to Aziz after that break. And so it's been odd, but I've taken the last year off from dancing. I've maintained a connection to him, but I've been very gingerly exploring dance where I'm almost retraining myself and I'm working with different types of music and I'm just letting it be really gentle because the ego, the conscious mind has all of these associations, all these memories, anchors, triggers, some may say.
Triggers, yeah.
And patterns, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to just wash that off. And I feel like this thing I love is right here on the other side of this really egoic trap.
Yeah.
You know? So that's been a journey I've been on the last like 2 years. And ironically, I find dance to be more of a spiritual space for me than tarot ever has been and ever will be.
Dance.
Yeah. And that's why it's more a part of my personal life than my professional life.
Yeah. Wow.
So going back to mentors, I think people need mentors in their life.
Absolutely.
I think individuals then need to become mentors. I think that it's important to reach out and ask for help up a tree. And then when you can, it's important to reach back.
Yeah.
Right? And help someone else up. But that it has to come from a really loving space where you need nothing back.
Yeah.
For that gift. And what I see in a lot of communities is they need something back. And yet they call themselves a mentor or a guide, but it doesn't seem like the intentions are fully compassionate towards one person's growth. So that's just something I look out for in communities.
Yeah.
So I think a mark of a really true mentor is when they're giving and asking nothing back because they want to transmit wisdom to you and they want to find a vessel that will live this and carry it on. And so typically a mentor is somebody who's questioning if they want to stay in that world, that industry. They're aging. They're not able to do the work anymore because we've lost this idea of apprentice and master.
Yeah.
And I think mentorship in the modern world is the closest thing we have to that. And mentorship is more than just teaching a skill. As is apprenticeship, it's more than just learning a skill.
Yeah.
You live with the master, you know, you learn more holistically.
Yeah.
Life lessons. And I think that's the type of mentor you want to look for, somebody that has a life you admire and you want to gain their perspective on the world through learning this skill, but being able to apply it more broadly. And then you're making this sort of bargain with your hearts that you will also share this knowledge and use it to guide someone else later when it's your turn.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And it all makes so much sense to me. And it also makes sense why you'd find the conscious community here a little bit challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. There's different motivations in the industries now. And I see it in the tarot industry too. I don't involve myself much with tarot communities anywhere. And it's not to be rude. It's just that sometimes I'd rather not be influenced by what someone else is doing. You know, I want them to, like, I don't want to plagiarize or copy.
Yeah.
I want like free space to go explore.
Yeah.
And also I have my own mentors that I've been fed by. And so I'm still digesting that and exploring that.
Yeah. You have your own artistry that it's unfolding.
Totally. Yeah. Do you have mentors right now?
Yeah, you're sitting in front of me.
No, I'm not a mentor.
Well, this whole thing is, Phil Phails is an exercise in mentorship. It might not be in the way that you're thinking, but every time I sit across from someone, I take them in. An exercise in being here now with all of my attention on another person, following it wherever, inviting their practices into my life with the intention of being changed forever by who they are and how they see the world. Yeah, I have other mentors.
Can you tell us a story about one of your mentors?
One of my mentors. Goodness. My I'm trying to think. I know that in my life I've done deep dives on folks, but I think the type of mentorship you're talking about is deeply personal and
Yeah.
someone that's taken you in and shown you wonderful things without expecting anything in return. And as you say that, I get chills because I'm trying to think of when I've received that, and I'm sure I have, and it's just escaping me.
I think sometimes it's a model that we see. Like people may not know that there are mentors. They may not know the question we ask them is really significant to us. But you can see the way someone lives their life
Yeah,
and try to think to yourself, when you're facing a challenge, what would this person do? You
yeah,
know, and I think that that counts as mentorship in a way, especially if you're in touch with them.
yeah.
Yeah.
I read a book. I've done some men's work, and I
Ooh.
guess there are men in my life that I think are mentors. I talked to one of them. His name's Dan Workman, and he's actually going to come and do the He's going to come and do my show pretty soon. And he's someone I've always looked up to, and I've called when I have challenges, and I just respect him in his life. And um, um, there's a way culturally. There's a book called The Iron Giant in men's work. It's a book that comes up. Um, and in it, they talk about how culturally there would be a relationship between an elder and a young man. And it's something I think that has been lost in our culture
Yeah.
um, through fears around pedophilia or different types of reasons. You know, whenever you see a young person with an older person, culturally, it's just not the same as it used to be.
True.
So a lot of those avenues of that type of mentorship, or whether it's capitalism or whatever, the people that I've looked up to have been vast. Whether it's Thich Nhat Hanh and going to the Plum Blossom Sangha, or it's Eckhart Tolle, or whether it's Pema Chodron and going to the Zen Center, whether it's there's so many people, Fritz Perl and Gestalt therapy, Carl Rogers and the Human Potential Movement, Virginia Satir and family systems, Milton H. Erickson and kind of modern hypnotherapy, whether it's, John Gottman. These aren't people that I know and that I interact with personally, but they're people that I've done deep dives into as an kind of ADHD person. I go when I feel like there's if you thought of a gold miner, when I get a sense of the truth, a vein of that truth, tend to follow it for a long time and be with those people. And I I think I benefit from hearing the truth through different faces and with
Mm-hmm.
different words. Have this idea of a lake of knowledge or wisdom somewhere out there that I'm still searching for. Maybe like Neanderthals search for fire when they saw a picture of it in a cave. Said, "Oh, what is that?" "Oh, well, Tom Tom said he found it once, and so we'll find fire." And the ones that have found this wisdom, they speak of a place of having drank from that lake. And I know it's true because it sounds true or feels true. And through listening to those folks and exposing myself to those, I attempt to shift my attention from the finger to the moon, you know?
Yeah. One of my mentors used to say that everyone has a piece of the truth,
Yeah,
right? Like a puzzle. And you get one piece from each person,
yeah,
at least one piece.
at least.
If you get just one, like that's plenty. That's all you need. That's beneficial. And it sounds like you're piecing together the truth that's working for you.
Yeah. And it's this algorithm that helps me solve the Rubik's Cube or helps me relate or helps me find a meaningful way to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this Phil Phails is uh, my turn or my attempt to contribute to the world in a meaningful way, and also find a way to enrich my life. And I don't know how. That's why it's called Phil Phails. I'm stumbling through this, learning how to be an interviewer with a deep appreciation for attention and being with, and learning how to do all these technical things. And I want to share something with people.
What do you like most about this?
Hmm.
What I mean
We've
is, to identify that the criteria for this
mm-hmm.
is, what about this process gives you the most energy after you've completed it?
Mm.
Is it the preparation? Is it the conversation? Is it the editing? Is it the setup of the equipment? Is it the researching the individuals?
I don't research the individuals. It's this relating. When I get done with these, I just feel so much excitement. I've it's I think it's such a privilege to explore someone's world, to have them share, to reach it. When you said success for you was um, the aha moment that you sense in your the person you're working with. This for me is when I sense rapport, when I sense someone relaxing. When we started this, there were questions about what if I say it wrong? Will I be able to go back and change it? What is all these type of questions where it felt to me like you were in your head about being you and wanted to make sure you crafted something for folks.
Yes, but
Well, not in a negative
it
way.
was also very much that I'm coming over to a stranger's house alone
Absolutely.
as a single white female. Like
Absolutely.
just like I don't know why it's a single white female because the movie, that's just like a phrase stuck in my head. Sorry, that was not relevant.
That's
But
okay.
as a single young woman,
Yeah.
and so there is a lot of mistrust there. So like, I'm so happy that you ended up being a great human being.
Yeah. But I think there's
It took more than 5 minutes to get there.
this success for me
Worth it.
happens when there's a realization of that, and
Yeah.
there's like a real transfer of of knowledge and of trust and safety, like you're looking for in the folks that you connect with. I
I
love that.
I think there's also when you realize that someone sees you for who you are, right?
Yeah.
Like you're seen. Like you have great intentions. Like you're a very honest, authentic person who's really trying to do something good, create a gift for others.
Yeah.
And so maybe part of that relaxation is also knowing that you're kind of validated and being seen as who you are.
And I think
It's
I
like,
for some reason I had this idea that we're playing Mirror Cat now, and you're saying you, but you're speaking about yourself too.
I do also appreciate those qualities because I noticed that when I first moved to Austin, trying to meet new people was tough because they don't know who you are. And so it takes a while to let people know that you're dependable, loyal, honest, you know? And those things just come with time and you can't rush that
Nope. You can't rush that.
time and experience.
Yeah. You consistency and continuity, but also finding folks that are open to kind of yeah, it's weird. In Billings, the the fringe groups came together because they were French, and that what are the fringe groups in a town that's based on some idea that we're all French?
Is
Where
that what Austin is?
well, keep it weird.
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks here don that clothing.
I think I think that's a brand,
Yeah.
right? I think there are people who are multi-talented and they love to collaborate and they are creative and they love expression.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they are an increasingly small group of Austinites.
Yeah.
And then I think there are those who monetize the creativity of others. And they can create weird experiences, but it costs you to experience it.
Yeah. But there's I think I find myself in that discussion because then how do I how do you as a businesswoman, how do I as a, I mean, at the end of the day, this is in some way commerce. Like this between you and I is a barter. You're invited on to a show so that I can take you in and learn from you and grow. And in exchange, I open up a platform where folks can witness that
Mm-hmm.
and get to know you and also get to know me. And at the end of it, if it goes well, like, and folks want more of this in the world, there'll be some monetary exchange where they say,
Yes.
hey, Phil, we want you to keep doing that so that I can feed my daughters and so I can pay the rent and all that.
Yeah.
It's a tightrope.
It's an exchange of energy. I mean, okay, so also I know I say the phrase my mentor taught me, but I
Mm-hmm.
always feel like if I say something a mentor said and pass it off as my own, it's dishonest. I
Mm-hmm.
always like to acknowledge that it was a transmission that came from someone before me.
Yeah.
So one of the things my mentor said is that money is energy, and you do deserve to be compensated monetarily for work that you do. And there's other ways you can be compensated as well, but not all of them feed your daughters,
Yeah.
right? Or give you the freedom to rest, with a roof over your head.
Or health insurance and all that stuff. There's
Yes.
some of this energy has to come in dead presidents paper.
I've never heard it called that before, but
I've
now
never said it like
I
that
want to call
before.
it nothing else but that. A dead Benjamin. Um, but yeah, I think when it comes to this community, um, I see two different motivations in the weirdness that exists in Austin, and I'm really, really attuned to it because it's a big part of my work. My existence is based on understanding the motivations of these groups, right? The
Yeah.
business that I'm working with. Do I trust them? Will they be consistent? It's like that's why I mentioned this divide in the way I see Austin right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I see groups that are coming from the outside or groups that are exploitative, I guess you could say. And then I see groups that are from within that are truly sharing from within themselves as humans, not from a board of directors or a C-suite. A group of C-suite executives,
Yeah.
There's two different mindsets at play here. There's two different sources of inspiration. There's two different reasons why these experiences are being offered. And so in a city like Austin, I look for people over the age of 50. And that's when I know I'm in a good spot. And so, I love artists of all ages. I love creative groups of all ages. That's great. I'll be there to engage. I'll be there to support. I'll be there to contribute. But when I'm in a space where it's performers and artists that are older than me, I am there and I relax in a way that I can't explain. I just smile the whole time. So examples of this. I was at New World Deli today.
Mm-hmm.
The performers up on stage, they were so casual. They were so comfortable. They were so relaxed. They were so good.
Have you been to the Kerrville Folk Festival?
No, I haven't. I want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a jazz jam that happens at Alamo Mueller, Barrel
Mm-hmm.
of Fun. It's people that have known each other for a long time. They are so fun. They're all older. They're super talented. They just jam.
Yeah.
No charge to get in. Come enjoy the music. Please tip, buy a
Yeah.
drink. There's a belly dance group and there are women in there. They're not a group, but there's belly dancers and fans. And a lot of them are over 50 years old. And they get together and one of their husbands plays in a rock band and sounds like Eric Clapton. And then you'll have belly dancers come out, and this is at their private house. And then you can go feed carrots to the horses. And the energy in that room is something you can't try to replicate. Everyone is just there because they're happy to see each other. They're happy to see the art. They're happy to perform. Like they're having a great time. And you can't buy that. You can't make that. And I see companies trying to make that and it doesn't work. And you could just feel the difference. And I feel that in Austin.
Something that happens organically versus something that's manufactured.
Totally. Yeah, something that people really want to give and they feel supported when they give that. It's a cycle. You can see the cycle coming back in. They're supported and energized by the support they get back, and then they are able to give more. You can see the cycle happening.
Yeah.
And those are the spaces I love to be in. I think that's a great exchange. There may be money involved, but there's something more than that that is nourishing to us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that was a long story to get there.
no, wonderful. I look over at the tissue box and I realize you didn't even crack any tears.
But I was ready. I was
Come on,
ready.
girl. How do I get you there? Let's get that mascara all messed up.
You want to hear the kryptonite? You want the secret weapon? No,
I'm just kidding.
I'm trying to think right now if anything
I'm
could make me
grateful.
cry.
I'm grateful for how this has all happened.
I've walked through too many happy memories. Can I share a piece of advice that I'd like to offer?
Oh yeah.
I'm debating if this is just something that I was lucky with in my life, because we all have different circumstances, which is why I didn't share it at the time. But you heard in the beginning that I'm a strong advocate of putting experiences in front of yourself, choosing the right challenges,
Yeah.
going after what you want.
Yeah.
Strongly believe that. And I never realized until we talked about mentorship how another very big part of my life was the importance of receiving. The observation of the tools around you that you were gifted when you were born, in your environment, in your space, in your community.
Yeah.
And being quiet enough, being patient enough, being calm enough to let them come to you. Almost like you're sitting in a forest, and when you're quiet enough, the animals start moving around you, you know? And I think and I notice this in Austin sometimes, we're just in the use of having to go, or we're in the mindset of having to go get things constantly. And sometimes we need to just let things come to us and be quiet enough to recognize what has already come to us and how can we better explore that and go deeper with that. So I'd encourage you and anyone else who's watching to consider, when have they received a gift like that? How can they be open to receiving? And sometimes it means just sitting still and just identifying where have you felt that kindness, that compassion, and maybe that's something to then build a strong relationship with, whatever the source of that was.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that, because sometimes it's about receiving rather than searching.
Yeah. Like realizing that you have a lot now. I thought of a gratitude practice of like appreciating all the things that you have, and maybe looking places where you thought there was nothing, and noticing things that are really important that you were overlooking.
Can I expand on that?
Of course.
When I never heard the phrase gratitude practice until I came to this city.
Yeah.
And then I saw branded gratitude journals and stuff. So I kind of associate gratitude practice with a branded, like trademarked concept.
It's loving kindness meditation, a meta meditation.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so if we expand this beyond words to an experience, I would encourage more attentiveness to those spaces where you feel that warmth and that softness within you. Because obviously sometimes you need to be conscientious to help inspire that. But sometimes you'll realize that when you were in someone's presence, you felt that warmth. You felt loved and cared for.
Yeah.
And so if you can look back and identify, where did I feel that most recently? Who do I tend to feel that around? What spaces help me feel that? Be in that space more often. What's going on there? What are the components there? That creates that awareness for you to realize that when you're here, you're receiving this, and it's a gift, and you can invite it, and you can kind of strengthen the channel that's bringing that to you in a loving way, and then fortify that and have that as a source, and then have those people in your
I think
life.
this gets to a question, and it's one I've had about my own self and my own past. It seems like in your childhood, you didn't have a lot of modeling and examples of that. Not a lot of like felt sense of love with your mom, not a lot of like deep felt sense of love with your dad. Although everybody was, there was some knee-jerk reactivity in your mom and some mental health things that had disassociation or whatever you're calling it, stilling yourself, preparing for tidal waves, I think were your words. And there's some way, for me, it's been required to almost a lot of the folks I meet with are seekers, and I'm a seeker, and I didn't really know what that meant. And I still probably don't know. That's probably part of the seeking. But my current idea of it is that I learned a lot of the ways not to do things. I learned a lot of I had a lot of role models. You're going to have role models, you know. Everybody's a bodybuilder. So what kind of body are you building? Um, and in realizing that the folks that I had as role models were teaching me what not to do, what I was left with was a search for what to do. And so there's been you know, all the places I've looked and all the people that have been mentors, whether afar in workshops or mindfulness communities or contemplative practice communities or in, relationships, all of them have been seeking that. What is that felt sense of love and empathy and connection? And how do I know when it's true in others? And how do I open myself up to it? And so the question I have for you is, in a place where that wasn't a part of your upbringing, in a place where that wasn't nurtured in the home, where did you start to unlock it? Or did you?
I unlocked it after a very painful experience. Yeah, I did unlock it after a breakdown, a fall apart moment. So when I was 20 years old, I moved to New Zealand alone because I had dropped out of college, realizing that it was far too expensive. It was when tuition was $60,000 a year, which is standard. It's ridiculous. And I wanted to learn dance in a foreign language. And I thought, hell, I'll just go travel the world and do both at the same time. So I started in New Zealand because I thought that it would be a safe place to get my feet wet. Move halfway around the world for a year alone. In that year, I was so isolated, so alone. I mean, I traveled the country. I worked in Lord of the Rings film sets, which was super lucky, super cool. But I also had these relationships that were really shallow. Part of it is that the people that I was around, they didn't really emotionally connect with me because the way Americans connect and the way New Zealanders connect are different. New Zealanders behave very similar to British people, where emotions are kind of tucked away.
Yeah.
And with Americans, we're like, until you have that type of like excitement experience together, you don't really know if you bond.
Yeah.
And until I know that I connect emotionally with somebody, I don't really feel comfortable with them. That's my way to connect. So I was really challenged in that space. And I didn't know that'd be a challenge. And internet was $100 an hour if I wanted to call home.
What?
On a Zoom call. And I wasn't making that type of money. So I would call home for 1 hour a month. And I wasn't even that close with my parents. I didn't have any friends I was that close with. And that'd be worth that. And nobody came to visit. It's an expensive ticket. Family was frugal. I'm not mad about that. So I was really alone, figured the whole thing out on my own, came home absolutely broken as a human being. I knew I could not keep living like this. After a year feeling like a leaf on the wind, I knew I had to change. So the first thing I did to heal was I started cooking dinners. I would just cook because I didn't have a job when I first got home. I temporarily lived with my parents. And I knew if a meal didn't turn out, that's okay. I could give it to a dog and give it to my sister, like someone else.
Yeah.
Start over tomorrow so I wouldn't have to be too hard on myself. And it was through cooking that I rebuilt my confidence. And then I decided to change my life, and I read a couple books that helped me do that. One was the book Radical Honesty by Brad Blanton.
Oh yeah.
You know it?
Well, do you know who he's a student of?
No, I forgot.
Fritz Perl.
Yeah, okay.
Gestalt therapy.
I don't know much about that.
Well, you do.
Okay, then I've lived it.
Well, if you know Radical Honesty, I mean, I've gone to Radical Honesty workshops.
Oh my gosh, because he's in Texas, right?
Huge fan. Well, he's not part of Radical Honesty anymore. They passed it on to another community of people that are carrying on that torch. But yeah, he's a student of Fritz Perl. Well, he was one of he practiced Gestalt therapy. He's a An amazing man. And so you probably know more about Gestalt than you think.
maybe. But again, I'm a practical application person.
Yeah.
I'm not an analytical, theoretical
You
person.
got into radical honesty.
So I started Radical Honesty. I read this, changed my life. And then I also read a book by Dr. Dean something, and it was about the power of relationships. And I looked this up a couple weeks ago because I'm writing a book right now and I wanted to reference it.
Ooh, you writing a book?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're gonna have to have a follow-up convo.
Okay. So
Tell me about the second book.
he had done research about heart disease and relationships
Uh-huh.
and how people die so much earlier when they have poor social connections, and how having those relationships and support groups and families and
There's a
whatnot helps
documentary
people
about
live.
the blue states or the blue
Blue
areas in
zones.
the world, blue zones.
Yeah.
And one of the big things they found were purpose, and social network community.
Yep. Yeah. And this research shows the same thing.
And the same with cognitive health. Like in order to people that have diverse social networks that they keep in their mind is a way of keeping the mind strong. I don't know that this is all technically correct, but that's how I make sense of it. If you carry a network of people in your mind, that's going to keep exercising your brain.
And you're talking to different people. You're making cognitive space for
Those
love maps.
those love maps.
Yeah.
John Gottman.
They're relationships,
Yeah.
and then it helps you stay active.
So you read those books, you were in Billings.
And I knew that relationships were paramount to a healthy life.
Heck yeah.
And I decided to become more honest. And so I would say I did maybe 70% of radical honesty. I didn't tell anybody I thought they were fat, even if I did.
I don't think radical honesty can go a little too far. You don't have to tell people.
Brad Blanton, I think, liked the shock factor.
I think that helped. It was clickbait before there was clickbait.
Exactly. The man knew how to write an entertaining book.
He did.
Got you hooked.
Yeah.
So I used that, and I ended up building the most incredible friendships. That was the summer that now my friends and I call the golden summer. That was when we all came together. Each person knew somebody, and everyone kind of got brought into the group just by happenstance.
That's when
That's Meditation Society.
Right.
That's tarot cards.
Yes.
That's ribbon dancing for
So
fun
you
in
started
mountains.
going out into the world and exposing yourself to new things and new people.
And ironically, my sister told me I was the most annoying I've ever been that year.
Of course you were. It's like when someone discovers veganism
And then
and they get the neck tattoo and everything's about veganism. Hey, I love you vegans out there. This is not against you. This is a social trope that I've heard that might be true. The same with nonviolent communication. When someone learns nonviolent communication and they structure everything in that form,
yes,
when you're changing,
or parts languaging.
like my part, I've got a part that does, like
I taught parts languaging to my dad and his brother.
internal family systems.
Yeah, and my uncle Todd, he said, "Hey Doug, a part of me thinks you're an asshole." And my dad said, "Hey Todd, a part of me doesn't give a shit." And I'm like, "Good job, boys. Good start. Good start.
job.
Good start. Let's change it up."
But
Did a round two.
every part of them loved you, though, I'm sure.
Maybe.
For sure. That's the way when we invite new things, we're kindred spirits.
That's very sweet.
For sure, we're kindred spirits.
So let's go back to the summer.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, those friends are still the closest friends I have now, and I do think honesty needs to be at the core of every relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But it's so hard. It's like there are so many white lies you deliver in a day. And so a lot of times when I'm looking at somebody in the eyes, in the back of my head, I'm wondering, should I tell them this or not? Because decorum is real. And when you're choosing your words about veganism, when you're presenting yourself as a business, you're just thinking, should I or shouldn't I? Because there's layers that you're thinking through. But it's so much more fun to be honest.
It's fun to be honest. I'll give an example of how I was honest here recently. I'm single and dating. I'm in the dating world, and one time I showed up at a date, and well, I don't really call them dates. We hung out, met at a park to go walk around and hang out and get to know each other, kind of to see if I'd even want a date. I think we go. Anyway, I'm not going to go there.
How'd it go?
Well, the person who showed up looked very different than the pictures that I'd seen.
You got catfish?
And I don't think it was catfish. I just think the pictures that were presented in the thing were very different than the person who showed up. And so my expectations were based on the pictures that I saw, and the person who showed up was the reality of that human being, and they were different. And so I noticed disappointment. I noticed, like, you know, and I'm real compassionate. I imagine that folks go through. I don't have a ton of great pictures, like not a billion of them. So I go through maybe 5 years and pick the best one out of 5 years. I mean, that's what I used to do. Now it's not about great pictures. It's really about who am I today? Like, who's going to show up? And so in the first 10 minutes, I said, I just want to share with you something that I'm experiencing it because you might notice it in my demeanor. You might notice it in the way I'm carrying myself is that I expected you to look a little differently based on your pictures. I noticed that your body shape is different than the ones that you had on the dating app. And it was difficult. And excuse me, I say it with as many thorns taken out, as like dry as I can. I'm not judging her. It's not body shaming. It's not, you know, it's nothing other than I expected X and Y showed, and I want to share that with you. It's a difficult thing to do.
What was the response like to that?
Um, she said that makes sense. She was wondering if she could have pictures on there that showcased, her full form clearly and things like that. And then, you know, she said, I'm trying to remember. She said something about like maybe it doesn't always work out. And I was like, well, it doesn't mean that I'm not saying that I don't want to continue connecting with you and get to know you. It's just something that's with me right now. And so we did continue and we talked for an hour or so and then we parted ways. So yeah, that's how that happened. But I think it seemed surface level after that. Like as I was trying to build rapport, it was difficult and I don't think I got there.
Hmm. Do you think you felt a little misled, and so you were wondering what else you might be misled about?
I don't think I thought that much. I didn't think that much into it. It was just, you know, wanting to being transparent
Yeah.
about my state of mind with her. Cause it was big. I was like, the reaction I had was like, oh, and I guess it speaks to like you build this thing, this desire, this like idea of a human being based on words and pictures. And it's not until you show up, I mean, it can be a real whole fantasy thing in your head. And I think that's where that beginner's mindset, coming back to that zero card, the perfect circle that's empty in the middle. When you meet someone new, emptying yourself of all desire and assumption and expectation so that you can really breathe them in. You can fill yourself with who they are now.
Yeah.
Because if I had done that, maybe I wouldn't have had that disappointment.
Well, what I was thinking when you said this is that what you demonstrated there was a willingness to communicate and
Yeah.
have uncomfortable conversations right off the bat. And so having somebody who appreciated that that's a really great test to understand if that's a level of communication you can have with somebody. Are they ready for that? Or do they want to have those types of conversations? Not everyone does. And some
Most
people
people
would,
don't.
most people don't. A few weirdos would be like, oh my gosh, yes. Oh, and by the way, I didn't expect I'd see this in you, and da da da. And like they'd throw it
Yeah.
back at you.
Yeah.
And then you'd have this really transparent, open conversation, right? And then it would just be this sense of connection over ability to share.
Yeah.
And instead, it sounds like you didn't quite feel that comfort in always being that open, or it didn't
Weird.
quite
It's a weed
come
out
back.
question for weirdos. I never thought of it like that. I am looking. Part of this
It's a
Phil
filter.
Fails is also a filter.
Oh!
Look at you. You're on the team. Hey, you're hired. Okay.
I'm on the marketing team, aren't I?
Yeah, you're forever. A part of this is like looking for my weirdos, my flock. Um,
Dang, that was good.
yeah.
And then you'll get your fans.
I get my fans and my flock. I want folks that resonate with this type of seeking and the type of seekers that I resonate with. And because I've had a hard time finding it. Maybe it's my age or maybe it's COVID. I don't know what it is, but I don't want to do it through going to jobs at software companies. I want to do it a different way. And it's like, I'm just going to broadcast out my ideas through the people that I interact with or the way that I interview or the things that I'm interested in and figure that'll resonate with a certain number of people that will be my people. The same way you went back to Billings and started cooking and then went out into the world and found the meditation group and you know, you were about to say something.
I was about to share the metaphor of the lighthouse. Have you heard it?
Tell me. Oh,
We spend time and challenges being a boat lost at sea. And then once we figure out who we are, we can be the lighthouse that guides other ships to shore.
yeah.
So this feels like you're beaming out a beacon
Yeah.
to see who it attracts in. And maybe not everyone is the type of person that you do want to connect to, but at least you're, turning the light on,
Yeah.
opening up the opportunity, seeing who comes to you.
Well, that's a perfect segue because I'm really grateful that the lighthouse beam brought you here. And I know it wasn't through watching the interview, but it was through some like openness, some courageousness, some like sense of adventure to be a young single woman that comes to a strange man's house and sits down in a chair and trusts what will unfold there. I really do appreciate you for coming.
You're welcome. I think we're both lucky because I researched you and could find almost nothing about you.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I really did my research to be safe, right?
Did you find my my LinkedIn?
I did. I knew you were in software. I thought that was a good sign. I also may or may not have researched who owned this home.
Oh, you
Property
looked at
records.
the
Maybe.
you went into the
Maybe.
Travis County
Yeah. 2019. Nice
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
You got lucky. Or you had very good intuition.
I think I was a little bit of both.
I'm
Just a little bit of
embarrassed to
both.
admit I did that much research, but that really is like, I just kind of want to share that because I know it's a chaotic and a crazy world,
Mm-hmm.
and it is hard to build relationships with people that you trust. It's hard there's so many people in the world.
Yeah.
And we're each so valuable,
Yeah.
right? Our time is valuable, our spirit, our thoughts are valuable. And we all need to do our due diligence to be around people that we respect and make sure that we're being respected back as well, that we're sharing and we're receiving appreciation for that. And, it's that exchange. And so that was how you obviously had a chance to get to know me before I got to know you somehow. And I know you said you didn't research
I
me,
didn't do any
but
research. I don't know if you're a
But-
homeowner or not.
I am now.
Are you?
Yeah, but I don't think I have a record yet because my house is still being built.
What?
So I bought my first condo this year.
What?
I know.
Where? Well-
It's in Mueller.
In Mueller? That is awesome.
It's great. It's my favorite little spot in the city.
They're building a little town. Is it a condo?
It's inside a big building. So it's going to look like an apartment, but I just pay a lot more money for it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it's what I wanted because that's what I'm familiar with.
You'll be close.
I'll be close. My office is in Hyde Park. I love this area. And it was supposed to be done last month. And then, believe it or not, the construction was delayed. Shocking, right? How could that have happened?
That's not shocking at all.
So there's actually going to be a gap between my lease ending and then my ability to move in, which is still unknown. And that is very scary for me because I'm responsible for providing business services to people, right?
Oh my God.
But I decided that if life is going to throw me this craziness, I'm not going to resist it. And after I cried for like 3 days straight and was in panic mode, I decided to reach out to somebody. She has a guest house in Seguin, Texas.
So you're moving to Seguin?
For 1 month. And I'll be there doing an ad hoc writer's retreat in a woman's backyard, helping her tend the garden and taking her on a date once a week, just, for company,
Oh my goodness.
and to express appreciation. And then I'll hopefully finish my book in that month.
What?
So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to kind of disappear. I won't be too worried about emails. I won't do classes. I'll do virtual events, but I won't be as,
You won't be as present here in Austin.
yeah, that might be the only way I can get the writing done and be in that flow state uninterrupted.
I think part 2, I need to know more about this book, but we don't have the time for us even to delve into it. But I want to know more about the book and where you're going.
Maybe we should talk on the other side of writing. Because
Yeah.
maybe I don't even know where it is.
Heck yeah. The book is going to have, if you go look at that whiteboard, you'll get an idea of what I thought this show was going to be and how I talked about it with folks. 20 interviews in, it's totally different. There's a Rumi quote: as you walk along the path reveals itself, or the path, as you walk along the path unfolds, or something. And that's the truth. I thought it was going to be totally different than it is. So when you get out there and start writing things on the paper, you'll figure out what that book is.
That's what Nabokov says about writing. He says that the words are already on the page. It's the writer's job to unveil them.
Yeah.
Like there's a story that needs to be written, a book that needs to be written. And I question it because there are so many books about tarot. I'm on my 4th draft, to be fair, but it has not all come together yet. I mean, it's copy and pasted from 10 years of experience, of syllabi and notes and documents I've made.
Will there be a deck along with the book?
No, I have no interest in creating a tarot deck.
You could put your dog in there. Do you
No
have a
need
dog?
to. I'm not that egotistical. I don't have a dog. No pets. Just plants. I could put my pothos in there.
Put your brothers in there.
But I've never wanted to create a tarot deck. Why remake the wheel?
Yeah.
It's already working great. Been working 100 years.
Yeah.
Stick with the Rider-Waite-Smith.
You're a Rider-Waite-Smith
I am.
person.
Have you used the Toth?
I haven't. Yeah, well, I like Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, we should talk about him sometime because that is such an interesting character in history.
He is an amazing, yes, he is.
I once had somebody leave my tarot class. It's 6 sessions. She left on the second class. So it's 6 classes. She left on the second one because I mentioned Aleister Crowley.
Really?
She's such a polarizing character in the world.
He is.
That she just left the money on the table, didn't ask for a refund, sent me an email and said, I'm not coming back.
Well, the Satanist, that the idea of that is very challenging for folks.
And the person who was probably gay, right? Or at least bi and was demonized in society. And had
we
to
could get
repress
into Aleister
desires.
Crowley. I like that deck. I've got one of those decks. I've got the Marseille. I've got the Rider-Waite-Smith. I've got the Toth.
Mm-hmm. Do you work with the Marseille very often?
I haven't. I like the imagery of the Rider-Waite-Smith in the minor arcana number cards. Whereas with the Marseille, you just have the swords and their curves. It's just a number of them. You don't get the imagery.
So it's the difference between the 3 schools of tarot?
No, tell me.
In the French school, they say that it's very intuitive and very based around numbers. So that's your Marseille deck that would be used. In the English school, it's very based around correspondences, charts and tables of correspondences of planets and goddesses and gods and elements and so on. And then the American school is very creative, which is very American. The entrepreneurs, right? We're going to make this up. So there's a lot of flexibility here, I guess, and expression with tarot.
Yeah.
And the Rider-Waite-Smith was created by an American and a British occultist, both in the Golden Dawn. Both had traveled across from the U.S. to England a lot in their lifetime. And so I think it really merges those 2 qualities. So Crowley I associate with that English style.
Yeah.
It's so complex. It's so in-depth.
Yep.
For really analytical people, I think they love that. For really visual people, I think it can be jarring because of the style of design. And so for me, I find it jarring and not in a way that's helpful. So my intuition. And then with the Marseille, that's what I use as my personal deck before I go to bed.
Yeah.
Because I work with the Rider-Waite-Smith with clients because I can invite them to see what I'm seeing. I can say, do you see that person's facial expression, the way they're holding this cup? What do you associate that with?
That's what I first do oftentimes is let's just look at this card and what does this say to you? What do you see here? The 3 of cups, it's easy, 3 people cheersing the cups and you think, well, what does that mean to you? Are they celebrating? How does this look? And
if you say these are people celebrating, they can validate that. They can say, oh, I see that too.
I see that.
So you're building that trust and it's like you're walking together on a journey. There's no doubt. You're not asking them to take a leap of faith on you.
Right.
Marseille, though, You're like, hey, look at those 4 flowers. That means you're going to get married tomorrow. Like, they don't know.
What?
Like, there's nothing to work with. There's no way to prove it.
Right.
So I always use the Rider-Waite-Smith with clients for that reason. But then when I'm home and alone, I need to get out of work mode. But I love tarot. And I want to continue growing in that space. And so I continue to explore it in order to be a few steps ahead of clients and students and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so I use the Marseille deck and I look up those meanings in a different space. And they're very different than the Rider-Waite-Smith. And it's delightful. It just breaks everything that I'm used to. And that's what I need in order to do a successful tarot reading. Like, I have to break my own ruts.
Yeah.
Sometimes in order to find the new paths. And then once those become ruts, great. I can teach someone else to walk down that well carved out path that works and is safe. And then, I get to forge in new territory.
Yeah.
So that's one good reason to have multiple decks, is to have different ways you can interpret and learn the cards.
Yeah.
I notice I have a habit of always trying to have a wrap-up conclusion sentence to a paragraph to almost justify why I went on a rant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought I'd share that observation.
I think this is probably the longest interview I've ever had.
Oh, dear.
And it's because...
I ranted.
Why'd you, oh dear? It's because
Good question.
I'm enjoying the conversation. It's I'm interested in it, and it's easy. Time flies by.
Well, thank you for letting me share so much about tarot.
I'd like to continue this discussion in some way, shape, or form, and we'll talk about that afterwards. I'm really grateful to have shared this time with you. Is there anything you want to share in conclusion before we wrap up?
For anyone that's interested in tarot, I would recommend to use tarot in a way that benefits your life and explore it in your own way.
Yeah.
I really want people to feel that freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. This is Phil Phails at Tarot with Carly Fischer. And thanks everybody for hanging out with us and watching. Wave goodbye to everybody. Carly, all of them. Can I have a hug? Are you a hugger?
Sure.
Let's do it. That's it.
Great job.
Great job yourself. You've got so much.